Hey all, Pixel here in Probable Garage. And you know how I did all that wheel work recently on both vehicles? Custom new wheels on the van, all new wheels on the Cube, new tires, blah blah blah. Now I have new wheel problems. Or more accurately, I've got a couple wheel issues I need to address. I unexpectedly took this for about 1,100 mile road trip on Memorial Day weekend. As in, I got the idea in my head Friday night, Saturday at noon, I was on the road. Performed great. I did an oil change because it was overdue. It was going to be way overdue at the end of that. And I fixed a leaking windshield washer hose. I'm actually now going to do a video where I'm going to pull the windshield washer system apart and sort of show you how to diagnose why yours may or may not be working properly. But that's going to be a little bit down the line. But that's all I did to it. Oh, I checked the tire pressure and stuff, but did the drive flawlessly. 9 hours straight on the way down, 9 hours straight on the way back, no problems. The one thing that occurred to me while I was on the trip that I hadn't checked was I never double checked my wheel bearings after doing all that work. So I tried to check them down there, discovered a new problem for myself, which is now that I've lowered the front end, the bottle jack I had for changing the tires in here doesn't fit under the front end anymore. So that's a separate solution I need to find. But came back, jacked it up. I don't even know if I can get this to show, but this wheel bearing is loose. So I just need to pull the wheel off and tighten that. That shouldn't be an issue unless I find some weird surprise in there, but that's normal. Like, sometimes you don't get the adjustment quite right, or they loosen up over time, like just when the grease settles in and whatnot. This side is fine. In fact, this side might even be the slightest bit tight, so I'm going to double check that too. But that's a quick fix, like I said, unless I find a surprise. Unfortunately, this has been having a vibration, slight squirreliness, and a bit of other weirdness. It just doesn't feel right when you're driving. Like, sometimes when you brake, it vibrates the wheel. Sometimes when you're driving, the wheel will, wobble, like the steering wheel will wobble. I was hoping it was just wheel weight fell off, or those wheel weights that I moved knocked that wheel too far out of adjustment. But I had to check the big fear. Hopefully that's showing up on camera. That wheel is wobbling really badly. I'm like 99.9% sure it's a bent wheel because the tire seems nice, the wheel seems nice and tight, but I'm going to obviously double check because that's the side I didn't put a wheel bearing into. All the lugs are tight, I've checked that. The other side has a slight wobble to it as well, but nowhere near as bad as that side. So I need to jack the rear up and do my best to check if the rear ones are bent. If the rear ones are bent, then I just got unlucky. I bought some wheels that were bent. I don't blame the guy who sold them to me. He knew nothing about them. He bought a car, he took them off immediately because he didn't like the look, and put different wheels on. And they've been sitting in his basement for who knows how long. But if the rear ones are bent, then I just bought some bent wheels. I got to get them fixed. If the rear ones are pretty much dead on, then what I probably did was bend them when I tightened them against the caliper and then tried to move it, and it ground against the caliper. So in either case, those front ones are going to need to get straightened. That's not a me job, that's a pay somebody to do a job. So I'm going to have to take those somewhere. But if the rear ones are at least straight, or more or less straight, I can swap the bent ones to the back and make it drivable. Also, in addition to that, got a couple other little projects. I forgot to put the resistors in for the turn signals in the front that I said I was going to, so that job needs to be done because this side is hyper flashing. Bizarrely, and I don't understand this at all, but it hyper flashes when you turn the turn signal on, but if you hit the brake light, sometimes but not always, the hyper flash goes away. I don't know what's going on in the brake light wiring of that unit, because that's that one unit brake light that I replaced recently that might be causing that. But either way, if I put the resistor in front, it solves the problem. So I've got to get those mounted up. little stuff like that. Just some of the jobs I've done recently, I've got. And unfortunately, and I'm trying to get this all banged out, and I'm trying to get this all solved, because I want to work on that. Still having the problem if I'm not 100% sure if I want to keep it. But whether I'm going to keep it or not, it can't stay in its current state to be able to be easily saleable. Because trying to sell a car with the glass out and bare metal, this is just, very few people are going to want to buy it in that state. So I want to work on it, see if, get that excitement, but these two things keep not quite being done to a point where I can check them off. All right, that's got a little bit of a warp to it, but nothing like the front ones. Let's check the other one. All right, I got a dragging brake on this side. I know the rear brakes need to be done, so I'm guessing this one's just way out of adjustment. But yeah, this is definitely a dragging brake. But that means I'm not going to be able to do this very effectively. Alright, well that one doesn't look too bad. It's hard to tell when it won't spin freely, but this one looks better still than the front one. So I think I'm going to swap front to back. I've got them swapped front to back. I didn't have to do any grinding because it turns out if you put a wheel spacer on, they're not that close. I did have to move some wheel weights, and despite having a nearly new roll of 3M tape that I just used recently, it's vanished somewhere into the depths of the garage, and I don't feel like dealing with it right this moment. So just to find out how this is going to work, what I did was just use some metal tape to just tape down the wheel weights. It's really ugly. I hate it, but I'm going to have to, since I'm going to have to get the wheels checked and possibly remade, that'll do for right this moment, and I will fix it later. Because right now my biggest concern is not having the car vibrate like crazy when I'm driving down the road from bent wheels. So, whatever. But I gotta put this back on the ground, and then once I've got it down on the ground, I can tighten up the lug nuts and then call this bit done, and then I can work on the wheel bearing on that. All right, let's see. So as you'll notice, this is a shiny new dust cap. That's because like a week after not even, a few days after I did all that work and was driving it, I noticed that the dust cap had gone AWOL on this side. So I had to just stop in somewhere and buy one. It fit really poorly. I don't know how it's not going to be visible on camera, but I ended up having to stake it outwards in multiple places to make it a little bit wider, because it literally just slipped in and slipped right back out again with no resistance at all. But yeah, so what I'm hoping is I can just pop this to the next slot. So just Fortunately, this bit of rust that's developed here, because this is set in a couple of rainstorms, it's just enough to make it really annoying to discover whether that's good or bad in terms of tightness. So I guess I'm just going to have to put the tire back on and find out. These wheels have been cleaned since I took my drive, but like how fast the front wheels on this always collect brake dust is kind of shockingly bad. There's a part of me that's really amused that, like, I spent my entire car life trying very hard to avoid alloys, and in fact to avoid hubcaps. Like, my preferred setup was always poverty caps, you know, little center hubcaps, because that perfectly split the difference between steel wheel that required no maintenance and not having visible lug nuts, so I didn't have to feel like I needed nice shiny lug nuts. So, all right, yeah, that is done now. Easy enough. I'm glad this job was simple. I'm glad there were no surprises in there. Everything was still nice and wet with grease. So, drop this on the ground. Another issue, my underglow here was acting really weird yesterday. I was at a car show and I tried to turn it on and nothing was happening. And then when I came out, when it was dark, I discovered that this strip under this side and the front strip were lit white, but nothing else, and no playing with the remote would change it. And the inside ones and the ones on the back and the other side were doing nothing. So I was like, oh great, I must have burned out the controller doing welding. The under seat ones are on the side of the two that aren't working. So I was like, well, hell, you know, wait till it gets a little darker and I'll start diagnosing. I just turned it on now, and as you saw, the front ones and the under dash ones are now working properly and they'll respond to the controller, but this side and the back aren't working. And well, I figured out why. That'd do it. It looks like this got somehow over here and then pinched by the jack or jack stand and split. So the 3 wires in here are all cut. Considering I put the jack stand there just now, I'm wondering if that was damaged before and that's why it was acting weird. Like, that's why it was only doing the white light, and now I managed to cut it completely through, and that solved whatever internal short or whatever that was causing. And that's why all the other ones are now working now that this is completely cut. So what I'm gonna have to do is, obviously once I shut everything off, is go through, peel this all back, find good wire. I've already pulled it out a little bit so that I've got some overlap. I'm gonna have to fix these wires, rewrap them in something, and then find a slightly better routing. There's a P-clip right here, and the strip actually starts back here. So I just need to figure out a good way to sort of secure the wire back here somewhere so it can't do this again. And I need to check the other side, because obviously I don't want that to happen on the other. I don't want to cut the other side. Yeah. My fault. Well, couple things. One, the bottom bolts of the fender is broken off, and the piece it goes into is bent, so something happened there. May or may not have been me. Also, I can't get any more length off of this, because I think at some point up in here or inside the car, it's getting hung up on something, and I need just a little bit more to feel like I can solder these together and then route them where they're not going to be right back in the danger zone. And frankly, I'm kind of tired. It's time for dinner. So I think I'm gonna clean up my mess over here, pull this in the garage because it's supposed to rain tomorrow, and then get back to this at another time. So I was getting a grinding noise on hard braking in the Cube, so I pulled the wheel off to see if I can figure it out. Checked the back of the wheel, no damage, so that made me even more confused. And then I looked at the brakes and audibly yelled out, oh shit, because that's the brake pad. That's the groove it's ground in the rotor. I have no idea how the hell. I think this might just actually be the backer, like the anti-rattle for the brake pad, but I'm not even sure, but like, yikes. So I need to fix that. Okay, So yeah, it is that. It's somehow the anti-rattle pad slid down the brake pad? I don't know. I don't understand at all what the hell just happened there. Also, the pad has clearly not been seated properly by this huge rust ring of earth. The top of the pad's been hitting, but the bottom hasn't. And I think that's... I fought with these stupid clips the entire time I was doing the brakes. And I think they're jamming at the bottom. So the pad is tilting, not sliding. So I'm going to go in, take a little bit of material off both sides of these, and maybe like the end of this one because I can get to it, and see if I can get that to move nicer. And I think I'm going to do the same thing to the other one. Actually, you know what? If that's been sliding, that's probably why this has backed itself out of there. How's the other side look? Okay, it's more consistent on the back, but there's also a little bit of rust on the top, which means, yeah, this whole thing's been being forced at an angle, not sliding. So yeah, I'm just gonna clean all these up a little bit and then try it again. I'm gonna have to do it without this anti-rattle clip because that is gone. All right, so I ground these down. It was really rough because I had to use just a cutting blade to be able to get into these corners, because the flapper grinding ones just don't have a sharp enough corner. But I took off material all the way around, did it on the other one too, and now these will, a little bit of fiddling because these annoying anti-rattle clips up here, but they will now go in and move much more freely now that I keep knocking them out. But yeah, they'll move much more freely than they did before. I'm going to put a tiny bit of anti-seize on all these surfaces because now they're exposed metal, and then I should be able to assemble this and my brakes should work better. All right, so got that fixed and wrapped in heat shrink, and all of my lights are now working again. So I don't know why it acted that weird where some of them were white but not responding to the thing. I think I said I think I may have shorted this. So the only thing I need to do now is figure out a way to get this to stay up and out of the way. I'm not sure the best way to do that, but I need to do that, and then I'm going to need to replace this fender lip retainer and figure out how to attach the bottom of the fender. But I think I'm going to wait for another day. I think I'm going to wait for another day to fix those. I just don't care right now, and neither of those are long-term problem. So yeah. So wheel issue taken care of on this, wheel issue taken care of on this, as well as the lighting issue and the surprise brake issue. Next time I take the wheel off on the other side for whatever reason, I'm gonna similarly grind the edges of those brake pads and put a little anti-seize on them. But I haven't been having an issue with that side, so I'm not gonna worry about it right this moment because just got too much going on. But hey, solved a bunch of problems for the moment. I'm gonna have to get obviously the back wheels on this straightened, but right now it at least drives reasonably like it wasn't before. So I will get that done when I can both find somebody to do it and afford it. So that's gonna be it for now. I'll talk to you all later. Bye.